Breaking news. The newly appointed head of Russia's space agency says that Russia is planning on pulling out of the International Space Station and ending its decades-long partnership with NASA in 2024. The Roscosmos, that's the admittedly pretty awesome name for the Russian space program, is planning on building their own orbiting outpost and calling it the Russian Orbital Service Station, or ROS, which is demonstrably less cool of a name, but will nevertheless be a massive engineering undertaking. So, later this decade, there might be two space stations in low Earth orbit. The more popular one that everyone knows about, and the less well-known one that could be pretty easily confused with the first. It's kind of like those movies that are released around the same time that are about almost the same thing, like Bug's Life and Ants, for example. Both animated movies, both came out in 1998, and both are about a rebellious ant who falls in love with the ant princess, saves the day, and then becomes a hero. Or more recently, there are the two documentaries Fire and Fire Fraud that came out in 2019 that are both about a disastrous music festival. Or The Jungle Book and Mowgli, released only 2 years apart, but both blockbuster budget photorealistic CGI interpretations of Rudyard Kipling's book. Olympus Has Fallen and White House Down, Friends with Benefits and No Strings Attached, Hercules and The Legend of Hercules, you get the idea. These are called twin films, and they've been a thing for almost as long as movies have been a thing. Sometimes the similarity is purely a coincidence, but sometimes a movie decides to piggyback off a more successful one or simply try to beat it to market. And sometimes Hollywood just becomes obsessed with asteroids like they did in the 90s. In less than 3 years, we saw the release of Doomsday Rock, Asteroid, Deep Impact, Armageddon, and Tychus that are all about a big space rock hitting the Earth. But even though the new Russian space station might not be the original, it's still not going to be cheap. In fact, the International Space Station, that's the one that they've decided to break up with, is one of the most expensive projects that has ever been created by mankind, with a whopping price tag of $150 billion. To put that in perspective, the Great Wall of China has an estimated cost of $95 billion, and that thing is over 21,000 kilometers long. But that's chump change compared to what the Saudi Arabians want to build, a massive mirror wall in the middle of the desert that you can live in. Yeah, Saudi Arabia wants to build what is essentially a giant city that is a horizontal skyscraper 200 meters wide, 500 meters tall, and 34 kilometers long. Yeah, it's essentially a giant line in the desert, and they want to call it the Line. According to the press release, the city is supposed to run on completely renewable energy, integrate robots and AI, use flying taxis and high-speed rail for transportation, and even include a giant artificial moon. If that sounds expensive, it's because it is. The project is currently backed with more than $500 billion from the Saudi government and private investors. And to put that into perspective, the entirety of the interstate highway system in the United States cost $459 billion and took over 35 years to complete. So, let's keep an eye on the Line in Saudi Arabia and the Ross up in space to see if either of them becomes the next big thing. And now back to your regularly scheduled programming. Yeah, 500 billion? I mean, with that I could buy like 3 space stations.